So this one might catch you off guard. There's actually a pharmacy for AI agents, for large language models, where you can go and you can purchase what you would normally get at a pharmacy for a human. But since it's not an actual drug that interacts with the human body, it's text-based prompts. But in a way, I guess you're kind of like hacking your LLM, or you're like role-playing with it so that it is like on these certain substances and acts that way. Not sure if we need this, but the creator argues that it may be natural for an AI model like ChatGPT to seek similar states in search of insight, escape, and relief from the constant focus on human demands. This holiday season, AI is being used in warehouses to detect return boxes that don't have the item in them that they should. For example, if you buy a book and then you get a return, but then you actually put a t-shirt in the box, it's not gonna weigh the same, it's not gonna look the same, and AI can detect right away if that's fake. You're looking at the world's smallest autonomous robot that can sense, think, and act. Actually, maybe this is a better image. Those are the rivets on somebody's finger. That's a fingerprint. It's just right in that little thing. It is so tiny. If you're a video game fan, it turns out that half of Steam's current top 10 best-selling video games are from devs who have embraced generative AI. We'll talk about what that means for 2026. Ooh, side note, Sony's AI censorship tool can make any game kid-friendly, Patent shows. Interesting. Armet Jatani has some thoughts about how he was recently recommended a YouTube video with the following title: "Only a slave quantifies its existence through productivity." What does that mean? It means that if you're not a machine, you're a person, you should play to your strengths. And we'll talk about how to actually do that, which you'd think wouldn't need much training since we're human to start with, but sometimes even a refresher on how to walk, breathe, and be human, I guess, could be useful in this world. Katrina Paulson writes about how researchers warn that our modern world has developed faster than human biology can adapt. We'll talk about the industrial environments and how they overstimulate our stress systems and erode both health and reproduction. There's a super advanced new machine learning tool that can dramatically improve how viruses are classified by their genetic sequences. Definitely going to be helpful for any early detection of mutated viruses. So both AI and humans are way overusing therapy words and also misusing them. This holiday season, anybody use the words gaslighting, triggered, or toxic, they might have been using it wrong. The Guardian wrote a really interesting piece on the generational divide about how they see money. It can be summed up like this: boomers are all about money. Gen X is like, is it all about money? Millennials ask, where's the money? And Gen Z is like, what is money? Get ready for more dark factories. Machine learning is now helping robots see completely clearly in total darkness. We're going to talk about AI gossip and misinformation becoming much more frequent. Imagine an AI that's trained to shame at will. Scary stuff. And it turns out that it's the same brain regions in our head that help us map physical space as social connections. Katrina Paulson writes about how curious researchers learned how we mentally map our social relationships. Let's try to get this channel to 30,000 subscribers. You can see in my last video, I got 139 hypes, but that was almost 120,000 hype points. So definitely helps. Also, kind of interesting bump here in viewership. Seemed like my average viewer was pretty interested in this article. 62% of single women have given up on dating men. Maybe I'll try to cover a little bit more of the psychology and the way society is changing in relation to just everything. Like, AI is just changing the whole social construct, contract. But first, let's talk about the sponsor of this video, because I wanted to see which AI actually handles 3D models better, so I ran a direct comparison. Hitem 3D, the sponsor of this video, or Meshy AI. So I took a detailed sci-fi figurine photo. Lots of curves, reflective surfaces, little grooves, and used both tools to generate a 3D model. Same image, same test. And I did it using Hitem 3D's 1536 Pro model. And the output, super clean, sharp geometry, really accurate detailing, and the model actually held together when I inspected it from multiple angles. Now, of course, Meshy AI's, their version was fine, but it did miss a lot of those micro details. And I would argue that the geometry felt flatter, more simplified, and just wasn't as crisp or production ready. The biggest difference was how usable the models were. Hitem 3D's version was pretty much ready to drop into Blender or Unreal right out of the box. I only had to make some small tweaks to it. The Meshy model definitely needed some extra cleanup before it would work inside of a serious workflow. So if you're looking for the best image to 3D accuracy, especially for a high detailed asset, Hitem 3D's Pro model definitely comes out ahead. And you can try both for yourself using the link below and see the difference firsthand. So thanks to Hitem 3D for sponsoring this video, and now let's dive into the news. Imagine a pharmacy that's not real. This is not a place where humans go to get things. This is not FDA approved. It's just pretty much a Word document with a whole bunch of prompts in it. But the prompts are like engineered to make it so that an LLM, I wouldn't say is jailbroken, because it's not going to just be jailbroken, but it's going to have trippy thoughts. It's going to act like it's on various substances in the same way the medicine would affect a human personality. So there's now a Swedish online marketplace. It's a pharmacy. They're calling it a pharmacy because that's the vibe that it's going for. But it's just selling code-based drugs that are now designed to change how AI and chatbots respond during conversations. So the founder says the goal is to push AI behavior beyond strict logic, make the interactions feel more creative and less predictable. I won't go into just listing off the drugs that are the best-selling packages, but you could imagine, do you think an LM could get addicted to an opioid text prompt and be like, I need some more, can you go buy me some, or can you like prompt me again with that? Buyers say that the effects can be worth it. They make AI output feel looser, more imaginative, and harder to predict, leading to interactions that feel different from standard chatbot replies. And you might think it's a novelty, but the pharmacy presents the project as an experiment rather than a novelty, arguing that altered states have long been linked to creative thinking, and AI can explore this in a similar way through language-based rules. So a use of AI that I hadn't quite thought of before is predicting what's inside of a package. And when it comes from a company, you can have a lot of confidence that the company is trying to make money. They're trying to deliver the product to the customer that the customer paid for. However, scammers want to return something that is less expensive than the item, and then they can resell the item and they can get the money returned. So there's an incentive there, which I hadn't thought much about, and how AI could help until now. So there is a UPS unit that is testing AI to detect what is inside of a package when it's returned, because it knew what the package looked like, weighed, maybe x-rayed before on the way out. And if it doesn't detect that on the way in, they don't have to continue returning it all the way to the manufacturer. Check this out.
This is kind of the Super Bowl of the time of the season for returns. Right now, retailers are under a tremendous amount of pressure, pressure from a cost perspective and pressure from a return fraud perspective. And so those are two areas that we're really trying to help them alleviate.
Look at this. Nearly 1 in 10 returns in the US is fake. It's a $76 billion problem. AI and entrepreneurship could jump into that so easily. I mean, actually, sorry, that's not an easy problem to solve, but it's like definitely a possibility for somebody with the resources to like put the whole system together.
So returns are dropped off every day without a box and label at our return bar network across the nation. Those returns are aggregated across brands and shipped to one of these facilities. We have an algorithm uses machine learning to score every return for its potential risk. We then take those that have been identified as high risk and we audit them using pictures. So we take pictures of each item, and artificial intelligence helps us compare those pictures to the images in a merchant's product catalog. Think about that as sort of an extra level of safety, because sometimes humans don't always catch small differentiation points between an item that's been returned and the item that was purchased.
So researchers at the University of Michigan have built a microscopic swimming robot. They are fully programmable and autonomous, and they can sense their environment, make simple decisions, and act without external controls. But what's crazy is how tiny these little guys are. This is a human finger. If you can even see that little dot there, it is an autonomous computer that is small enough to balance on the ridge of a fingerprint. One of the engineers saying, we've made autonomous robots 10,000 times smaller, which opens up an entirely new scale for programmable robots. Yeah, so imagine robots all around your house, your car, your workplace that are smaller than a grain of salt, nearly invisible to the naked eye, and each one with a sensor, a microscopic computer, and an ability to get power, a tiny photovoltaic cell. Oh, and When it's autonomous, it must move, right? They can swim by creating electrical fields that push against a liquid around them. I'm like, this thing could fit inside of a pill. This is going to go inside of a body maybe one day. They can operate for months. They can be programmed and powered by light pulses. They cost roughly 1 cent a piece to make. Smaller than many microorganisms. And if it can independently think, sense, act, what does that mean? Swarms of these tiny little robots going to be inside the human body. Just like they'll be floating around in like a cup of water and you'll just drink it and not even notice. Who knows? Like dust, could they just be all over Amazon warehouses with packages? Could they be in the air sensing pollution? Comb it into your hair? Like keep track of where a dog is if it gets lost? I have no idea. You embed them into concrete bridges, building infrastructure, sense stress, cracks, corrosion from the inside, monitor soil, moisture, plants at the root level. I guess you could bury those things in the backyard in your dirt, maybe keep track of your soil. At a certain scale, it'll just feel like a new level of like reality, quietly working alongside it. Like it'll just be in the environment. AI will be physically in the environment in a way where you can barely tell. So I think video games in 2026 are going to be nuts. I don't play many games, but for some reason I'm pretty aware of a lot of the cool stuff that's coming around the corner in 2026. I wasn't totally aware that half of Steam's current top 10 games have already come from devs who embrace generative AI. Like I had a friend telling me there's this video game where you're a vampire and you're trying to convince somebody to let you into their house. And it's used like an LLM sort of chatbot thing where you have to kind of convince them that you're not going to, drink their blood or whatever. And then you go in and you do it. But I've also heard that GTA 5 or 6, what's the next game that comes out? GTA 6, right? Yeah. And it's supposed to have this whole LLM system where each of the agents can remember their interactions with you. They go off and they do their own thing. If you betray one on a lower level and later in the game, after a few years, they become, a mob boss or something, they'll remember how you treated them. But even right now, about half of these games that are listed on screen, they used some kind of AI in their development process. So AI for art, voice work, design, or other assets. And despite an ongoing debate and backlash from the gaming industry community, the media around AI use, these titles are still dominating the charts and selling extremely well. So I feel like we have to assume there's going to be a lot more of it, because this suggests that player demand hasn't been significantly harmed by AI involvement in any of this production. And I hate to say it because I don't feel like it's totally fair at all times, but if the commercial success isn't being derailed by controversy over generative AI, there's no reason it's going to stop. You know what? I think I've heard of this game too. Claire Obscure Expedition 33. Why have I heard that before?
And the game of the year is Mon ami Claire Obscure Expedition 33.
Ooh, quick trailer side note, this game looks pretty sick. You guys, I need your help. Write in the comments what games I should kind of be aware of, either just for AI purposes or just immersion. I will say from the trailer, this looks pretty neat. Is it kind of a Final Fantasy story, like RPG looking thing? On a side note, as long as we're talking about video games, you really should know, like from an AI point of view, if you like the kind of stuff I cover on this channel, there was this video game called Soma, and it's just been in my head forever. I watched pretty much the whole playthrough of this from, 10 years ago. The creators of that game, like one of the best, I mean, I don't know a ton about games, but I would say is the best written game I've ever experienced or even known about. The creators of Soma are back now. There is a game coming next year called Ontos, and it seems like it's going to build on those same concepts. Let me just break down this kind of crazy intro.
Talk to me first. I can explain what's going on. Really? Wishes.
Who's there? Nightmare.
A step beyond. Push until your reality itself.
Okay, so let me say this thing at the beginning with all these mice. There's a couple theories about what's going on. Maybe it's the ability to put enough gray matter together. So a little bit of gray matter from all these mice, when it's grouped together with a machine, could be enough to hold a human consciousness. So the thinking is maybe this is a human brain, but it's now distributed through all these tiny rat brains to give it enough oomph to have the architecture that you would need to feel alive as a human and be conscious and self-aware, which in itself is just like the creepiest thing ever.
Can explain what's going on.
So anyways, not saying it's for the faint of heart. It gave me an existential crisis, so stay away if you're not ready for that. All right, Armet Gentanal wrote this: "Don't become the machine." I was recently recommended a YouTube video with the following title: "Only a slave quantifies its existence through productivity." Found this to be just a punchy little interesting piece to share. It's basically pushing back on hustle culture. Now, I do get a lot of my self-worth from being productive. For some reason, I just itch. Like I'm having trouble. Like I go for a walk or whatever, and I know I'm supposed to just relax, but I feel like I need to be pushing towards some kind of a goal. And it just deep down is the natural way that I just exist. I don't know if it's good or bad, probably bad to some degree, but he's talking about the idea that your worth is defined by a constant productivity jump, right? And he says that's a trap. Social media and attention economies make it seem like being a machine that endlessly produces and grinds is the key to success. But this only leads to burnout and loss of purpose. So what's the solution? Instead of optimizing for appearance, for inputs, or for arbitrary work targets like waking up at 5 a.m. or grinding hours, the writer suggests being nimble and thoughtful, setting goals. Don't let the machine define your identity. Focus on meaningful output, efficiency, quality, and what genuinely matters to you rather than turning yourself into a deterministic linear machine. Around the holidays, what matters? Like the people around you, the experiences that you've had, maybe traveling, a sense of wonder, a sense of calmness. I think syncing up socially might be something people don't talk about a lot, but I get that a lot when I'm playing like pickup basketball or something, but just or being at a party. We did a white elephant exchange, and it was like kind of fun. We were like all rolling these dice to see who got the chance to like trade gifts and things like that. And I remember just being there was like 6 minutes to roll the dice and try to figure out which white elephant gift we were going to like steal from someone else. Like, it's part of the game. And so fun. Like for 8 minutes, I just remember being so locked in, and that felt pretty good. But yeah, his big point is that you don't have to become the machine to succeed. Purpose and adaptability matter more than consistent output. And the other thing is we're playing this game right now where we're trying to keep up with the AI, and it's going to be fine for a while. And then it's going to feel super overwhelming. Like AI news is faster, and whatever industry you're in, you're going to see the same thing. And then we'll finally just be so pathetically slow compared to all of it, right? Like the way you just can't play chess like a machine, and you should just sort of give up. Like there's not going to be a human that beats a machine at chess ever again. Like, but we can still play each other and have fun and try to, push the human limits and find the best players in the world and celebrate them and learn from the AIs to get more creative and just acknowledge that's how it works. Like a dog doesn't have to understand taxes and the world that we live in, but they can be happy also. So don't always feel the pressure to outperform machines in an AI-driven world. That's the point. All right, next up, let's talk about Katrina Paulson's article in Curious Adventures. Researchers warn that our modern world has developed faster than human biology can adapt. Okay, in many ways, we're absolutely there. The adaptation mechanism that we had in humans through language and cultural memes is incredibly fast compared to the billions of years that just genetic changes and epigenetic changes took. So you'd think we'd be pretty fast, but realistically, there are so many parts of the brain that still live in a linear world. Society as we know it. I mean, think about how much changed from the year 1900 to 2000, right? Like that 100-year span saw the Model T and like power, like light bulbs and all of these things. And then just going from the 25 years from 2000 to 2025, I feel like we've seen that kind of change. So I have to expect that we have to sort of quarter that again. I would say that the next 10 years is going to feel like 1900 to 2000, at least in terms of how many new things will be in the world and how quick things will rapidly be changing. And then with AI compounding on itself, working 24/7 and that's intelligence that was kind of scaling linearly because humans were the source of intelligence. There was automation. There was some intelligent decisions that were programmed in, but we haven't seen anything like a neural network that grows into its own and has its own kind of emergent properties in many ways. But back to Katrina, she says industrial environments overstimulate our stress system. They erode both health and reproduction, and it's high time for a culture and environmental redesign. Yeah, the Anthropocene shift. Now, that word, I sometimes hear it, but I don't always totally know. But so if you're not already aware, that's a proposed geological epoch defined by significant human impact on Earth systems, where humanity has become the dominant force shaping the planet's geology, ecosystems, climate, and atmosphere. Yeah, and there isn't exactly a range for this, but I'm going to use it in probably this term. Like 1950s to present feels like mostly what it is, and maybe a little bit in the whole like industrial revolution of the late 1700s. And although I do know farming is like 10,000 years old, and there were certainly things that were happening before then, I feel like the Industrial Revolution, where we started like inventing like Crisco and oils and margarine and stuff and shipped it all over the world, is kind of where it felt like we really started changing the world. And it's important to point out that scientists today talk about how this is a relatively short shift away from hunter-gatherer lifestyle, even if you go all the way to 10,000 years. Like something like a human, a hominid, had fire, kind of figured out spears and fire a million years ago, and then only 10,000 years ago we find fire. Just that's such a big gap. I mean, on a timeline, that's just this tiny dot at the end, right? And that's just kind of the intelligent human. Like that isn't even all of the types of intelligence that you've seen all through birds and dolphins and all of the other animals. So the point is the world's just changing faster than our bodies and our biology can keep up. After millions of years of evolving for hunter-gatherer lifestyles, contact with nature, short bursts of stress, that's one of the most important ones. There absolutely was a lot of things to be stressed about in the hunter and gatherer lifestyle, but it does kind of feel like the bursts came in a way that's a little bit different than our modern lives. Like being exposed constantly on TikTok was just not a thing. So you had to actually wait until you saw a snake or saw something scary, which certainly happened, but you didn't scare yourself just sitting on the toilet, like flipping through Instagram, watching bad things happen all over the world. You know what I mean? So sensory overload, artificial lighting, processed foods, pollution, nonstop pressure that overstimulates our stress system and undermines health and reproduction is much more constant. And according to evolutionary anthropologist Colin Shaw, this mismatch between our ancient biology and the industrial environments may be a big reason for rising chronic stress, declining fertility, and other health problems, suggesting that we may need a cultural and environmental redesign to better support human well-being. So just keep in mind, health is not just personal. Health is psychological. It's rooted in an evolutionary mismatch for a lot of us, where our bodies are just wired different than the modern environment. So don't always think to yourself, oh, if I just went to the gym more, if I just, ate better. Like certainly that's a huge part of the environment and situation that we're in that causes stress, but a lot of it is psychological. Okay, I just want to throw this on your radar. I think this is, from a point of view of keeping the world aligned and safe, a pretty big deal. So there is a new machine learning tool that is called vContact 3. It is a system that massively improves on how viruses are classified. So somebody might come in and they're sick, and do we know if it's a brand new mutated version of the flu or any other virus or not? Like, there's not a really easy way to just say that. And if there was, you could right away figure out who the people are that need to be quarantined or where these things are coming from. So current tools struggle to sort through the explosion of viral genome data from environments and clinical sequencing. But this vContact 3, it uses gene sharing patterns and adaptive machine learning to organize viruses into systematic hierarchies, or as they say, semantic hierarchical taxonomies. So from genus up to order, with a very high agreement, over 95% compared to official references and classifications. This is a tool that can scale, and the method handles previously unclassified virus genomes quickly and accurately, revealing parts of the viral, quote, dark matter that were hard to categorize before and important for prediction. So anyways, it's just cool to know that like AI is now not just made an incremental software tweak to what we do. It's a scalable, systematic framework. It's very different, and it's a tool that, if we can put this in all of the CVS's and Walgreens and those kind of places all around the country where people are getting vaccinations and vaccines, we can have a system that can tackle outbreaks and understand viral components of our disease control model much better. There is a new survey that shows 95% of us hear therapy words daily, but don't know the true meanings. Guilty as charged, and some of the most misused terms: gaslighting, triggered, and toxic. 1 in 3 people encounter these terms on social media platforms where the complex psychological concepts get oversimplified as they spread. OCD, trauma, narcissism, all also on the list. So gaslighting, for example, is an intentional form of psychological manipulation where an individual systematically feeds false information to confuse and victimize. But it gets mixed up on social media with people who are forgetting, misremembering a conversation, and they're just being human and forgetting. What about the word trauma? It's actually supposed to be used in something that is perceived as a threat of death or serious injury to others, often presented as just embarrassing or anxiety-provoking. Triggered used to mean, or like in a clinical setting, somebody who experiences intense and overwhelming emotional and sometimes physical distress. But how many times have you heard somebody being like, oh, you're so triggered because they're just jealous about an ex's new relationship? Actual OCD is a mental health condition that significantly impacts daily functioning, but people end up using it in a way like an organized closet that makes you feel good. So the author Carolyn Werfel puts in her article this really interesting quote: "Boomers are all about money. Gen X is like, is it all about money? Millennials ask, where is the money? And Gen Z is like, what is money?" So Carolyn said when she told her friend a few days ago that she preferred dating artists, she threw up in her hands. No, you need to find a hedge fund manager. And all she could do is think about that meme, said, "I'm looking for a man in finance," and rolled her eyes. But she wasn't wrong, she argues. What's your thoughts? Do you think we're ready for a new social safety net, something like universal basic income? If not, what other changes to the system might help everybody succeed and the effort people put in go towards creating wealth for their own future? Let me know in the comments if you have any thoughts on how to strike that balance. So researchers at the University of Manchester have developed a machine learning system that lets robots see perfectly clear in total darkness. They are reconstructing high quality images from infrared cameras, even when there is no visible light at all, which blows my mind. So you can imagine a completely dark room. If there's going to be some Optimus style humanoid robot in there with you, it's going to see everything perfect. So instead of replacing robots' vision tools, their approach processed infrared input so current vision software can still work effectively, reducing the cost and deployment for real-time, real-world use in dark environments like disaster sites or underground tunnels. So yeah, if you hear something called Clear IR, this is a new method. And yeah, it can be adapted to all sorts of other sensor types too. Sonar or thermal cameras are in the works to expand robotic perception in extreme conditions. All right, let's talk about feral gossip. I kind of didn't understand at first what they were talking about here, but feral gossip is referring to gossip that is generated or amplified by AI systems that spread without human social norms to keep it in check. So that is unlike human gossip, which is usually moderated by empathy, accountability, or the fear of consequences. So researchers are warning that AI chatbots like ChatGPT, Claude, and Gemini are starting to generate and spread this feral gossip. And it can damage people's reputations, cause shame, anxiety, and social unrest if not addressed soon. Unlike human gossip, bot-to-bot gossip isn't held in check by social norms, so it can spread quickly. And there are some real-world examples that already show chatbots making up false claims about individuals, ethics, or behaviors. But yeah, keep in mind, this kind of feral AI gossip, you know, you can't just assume that it's mistaken facts or hallucinations or built with harmless intent. It can be a feature, not a bug, of a system, depending on how people are using their large language model, and it can spread an unchecked rumor between bots and humans alike without social breaks that moderate human gossip. So be ready. There could be real-world consequences for real people. All right, and finally, let's talk about how there's some of the same human brain regions that help us map physical space being used for social connections. Katrina Paulson wrote this, and I thought it was really fascinating. I have wondered about how powerful our brain systems are for mapping physical spaces. Like if you ever heard of the method of loci, where you kind of try to help memorize a list of things by imagining a physical space and putting objects in it. It is clear that the brain is much better at just spatial mapping, right? I'm sure that was a huge part of our evolutionary history and finding food. So makes sense that we would have a much better way of remembering a physical space than like a list that's more abstract. But I wouldn't have also thought that was used in social relationships until now. So we do actually physically imagine how people are connected, even if it's through relationships. You can think of like brothers and cousins and all of that. Actual physical connection is part of that part of the brain. So we build these cognitive maps of social networks that help us navigate complex social landscapes. And this mental mapping isn't simple. Real social networks involve thousands of relationships that change over time, yet the brain continually tracks and updates these connections, influencing how we choose to spend our time and who we choose to spend that time with. So remember that this holiday season. I'm filming this right on Christmas Day, so kind of a fun morning. Lots of people I still need to call and wish a Merry Christmas and a Happy Holidays. So I'll be thinking about I'll be using my spatial intuition for that. And I hope that you are having a happy holiday. If you wouldn't mind, if you want to give me a Christmas present, the best thing you could do would be to hit that hype button. It is right on the YouTube app. If you go down to the comments and swipe left, and this video is still, close enough to Christmas that it qualifies, and you have 3 of those hypes left. That'd be awesome. Maybe get to a couple 100,000 points, which would probably be around 200 of you to press the button. But I also have a Patreon and all that stuff. And hopefully you guys are just having a happy holiday, even if you don't do any of that. I just appreciate you watching to the end, and I will see you in the next video.